Hello everyone. Well, my name is Ekaterina Lysenko, and today we'll be talking about risk management. I will tell you about myself in brief. I've been working in IT for more than 15 years in such areas as fintech, grocery, transport information system, etc. But mostly I've been working in fintech companies, and I continue working there. So possibly some of you know me as the host of analytic tea parties. This is a community. We get together
нетоксичной компании и
and make non-toxic discussion of different subjects related to analyst's work. And currently I'm working in Robomartex company. This is also a fintech company which is located in Cyprus. We are brokers with international awards. So if you're interested in getting a job in Cyprus, so have a look at our job offers. Now let's go on, and I'd like to start my talk with a quote, remade quote of Andrei Knyshev, who talking about love. But I'd like to say same about risks. What he said about love. A risk is not like just like that. You have to do the risks. So this was a person who in '86 launched the Joyful Guys, very popular TV show, and also he is a composer playing cello. And let's talk about the risks and what it is. I was always a little bit confused with such phrases as risk is a deed of honor. Those who don't risk don't drink champagne. I think you've heard all these Russian sayings. But there is, a borderline between just risking and thinking. You have to understand whether the risk is well thought over. Because when you just risk, like I bet everything, well, that's not working. That's not paying. And if we talk about the risk management consists of risk identification, analysis, and decision making. It seems to me that this is a story which is like, you know, everybody who is above 30 in this room, maybe you've seen this 90s, in 90s and 2000s. There were self-made cartoons on the web which explained how to work with bugs, like name a bug, understand a bug, know everything about the bug, get to know his relatives. So risk is exactly about this. So all these three rules, identify, analyze, and take a decision, are same for the bugs. Maybe risk is a bug at the end of the day. So I like a theory where risks are separated into positive and negative. I think it's more fair than saying that risk is just something negative. Why? Because everyone who knows psychology encountered distress and eustress. You know what is it, right? What is the difference between them? So distress is when you are sitting and just saying everything is bad, life is pain, and eustress it's when you say everything is bad, but we will win, but we will kill everybody. So when you get a new project, you understand everything is quite bad, but you take a saber, get on the horse and attack an enemy. Then this is the positive thinking. So I think the purpose of risk management is for you have to boost good trends and try to decrease the number of negative trends and thoughts. That seems quite easy, but what can we do by working with the risks? First of all, we can define the deadlines and area scopes of the projects. When you know the risks, you can estimate something, of course, yes. But also I'd like to say that the risks we are talking about today, these are not the risk management's that we learn in the training course. For example, in the training courses, you can you see the section like how to take into account the risks in your project, and but more often it's like what will you do if your developer breaks a leg. Please raise a hand. Those who have extra developers, in case your developer breaks a leg, you can replace them. Do you have such? No, none such. Okay. And also a very interesting risks. What happens if we don't have enough funding? This is my second favorite. And by default, you think that you will have problems with funding, not the risk like not doing analysis properly, not knowing the subject area well. No, no, no. The problem is always with funds. No, no. We are perfect, but like you just have a look and understand that this will cost 10,000 rubles. Okay, I hire 100 persons and then I fail. Okay, the problem was only funding, of course. And very often the problem is not about funding or breaking leg, but risks. The story like which you can forecast for half a year, and normally you plan the risk for 3 months minimum. You never think about the risks of tomorrow. If it happens tomorrow, this is not your concern. You think you plan the risks for 3 years, for 1 year and a half, for 5 years. Well, actually, people don't plan for 5 years. Normally, in our day-to-day reality, we can hardly plan for 3 months, actually. And so you're morally always ready to replanning, and you not only replanning, but you take it in account in your risks, and that is quite cool. Why? Because you start living like that, not only in work but in your normal life. Raise your hands, those who live in for vacation. You have one the same list of items you take with you. That's cool. And does anyone did anyone go to Italy? You come to Italy for hours. You want to eat because you had only breakfast, and the restaurant opens at 7. Ever happened? Yeah. So, and after this situation, you have a list of restaurants in each city with the opening time, closing time, and you know all the sandwiches, and you start preparing lists for all possible situation. So some people live like that. It looks like paranoia or schizophrenia, but sometimes it can help you out, of course, because you don't understand how a person buys a chandelier without thinking about the lamps, buying lamps, and also calculating the power of lamp based on the area of your room, etc. So you don't have a risk that you don't have enough light in the room, because you're always doing like that. Increase of the transparency at the level of the company. This is good because it's a corporate matter. Then decrease of the number of incidents, because so everything will happen in your life. You will make mistakes, as everyone. So the incident will find you, but there will be some small things which won't be valid for you or which will not affect you. As soon as you start dealing with the risks, you will start talking about that, and business and development will start communicating in a better way. You will make this interface glue between these two departments. Doesn't matter whether it's a product company, project company, you will get this layer of glue, and this is a layer of risks. And also formation of a uniform single value approach, because according to the value theory, you cannot deal with risks if you will be punished for that, if you're going to be punished. You understand? Yeah, for example, somebody says, well, like, we have problem with security. No, this is not about that. There can be no story. When you find a risk, you come to your team and say, everything is bad. And they say, it's your mistake, you found it, you fix it. If you wouldn't find it, you wouldn't have to fix it. So Vasily will never tell you about the risk next time. In the best case, he will just cover it next time, hide it, and you will have releases where the task is like that, but you fix something wrong because it was done like without telling anyone. Cartoons. This is a classic example how they very often try to deal with risks. I really advise you to read it. And let's try to voice it over. My assessment 70% probability that everything will go smoothly and 30% that we'll lose money on that. If we lose money, will you recognize that you were not right? How can I be not right? I just estimated our chances. But if we lose money, it's just because we followed your advice. No, I just said that it's probable, that it's risky. No, but you declare that the idea is perfect. No, I'm telling about the probability, and it's small. So you don't recognize that you are not, that you were not right. So this is the situation in which we cannot deal with the risks. You come and declare a risk, but you are told that you were not right. So what can we learn from this cartoon? First of all, we learn that risk management is not a one-way road. So you can reach success only if you take a decision all together, if all the departments needed to consider these risks are involved in the process. The second lesson learned here is that we cannot deal with the risks like I'm in a white coat sitting on the white horse. So this is not a story when I am beautiful, I don't have a risk, but this is your risk. The risk is with the company, not with Vasily or Maria or something. It's the risk of the whole company. So any risk is your risk. You can help, don't do anything. If you cannot do help, just provide conditions to others to deal with this risk. And the third story is not very obvious, but it's important. Working with risks, we have to start analyzing. When we start analyzing, we go into retrospective practice. Why? Because we can forecast the risks of the future only understanding the history. Having this historical context, we can draw conclusions. And this retrospective look, if it has not become the basis of your company, of your team, then you shouldn't deal with risks at all, because you have to be able to honestly, fairly look backwards, see how you came to the point where you are now and how to go on. And the retrospective with this self-analyzing can become basis for dealing with the risks. And as soon as you start doing this retrospective analysis, you will accept the fact at the level of the values that everyone can make mistakes, including you. And that's very important. Let's now talk about the types of the risks. In each book about the risks, in the second section, you have types of risks. So I've counted 12 types. In my system, I have 4 risks, and that's my view. I don't say that this is the general rule. This is my approach. You have your own. So the first are regulative, legislative, information, and economic safety risks. So the law has changed, something has happened. Then the resources, the profit that you have not received, losses and costs. Time clear, people clear more or less, equipment, well, so the equipment this year has become a risk this year. For you to understand, in Cyprus we didn't have supplies of keypads with Russian alphabet. I use German one, but sometimes it's difficult to find letter U. But you can buy stickers. Okay. Currently we have problems with the servers as well. Sometimes it's not possible to buy servers. Sometimes you have a problem trying to find notebook. And this is something that if we didn't take into account that half a year ago, now we have to do that. Reputational risks. This is one of my favorites. It's for users, counter agents, and community. Here the story is quite interesting. The positive risk can work out well here. Why? Because when you go to a conference and tell something to a company, share some cases, make some presentations, well, you build up the reputation for the company. Now, just imagine that in a conference you tell a story about how nicely you do this transformation, that it's painless, or how you keep the work and life balance. In our company, we actually keep it. We have 8 hours working day, and at 6:20, the cleaning lady tells you to go home. And at this point, uh, this is a small thing, but this can really positively affect your reputation. When I did a presentation in as a masterclass at the recent team lead, I told about socially significant context. Very often we forget about that. A very good example: shuttles, a program of multi-use space shuttles. You remember the Challenger disaster when 7 astronauts couldn't land just because during the landing shuttle collapsed and they were burned. So just in 2 hours after this tragedy, Reagan, the president of US, made a statement, and in it, first time in the history, the statement started with the words Nancy and me. He positioned himself not as a president, but as a family member who shared the problem of the nation. And that was a risk. And the situation would really affect the whole space project, the space industry. But by this statement, he kind of reduced the risks a lot. In 5 minute statement, he addressed the astronauts, the community, the kids, the families, the citizens. So I think it's a pearl of speech writing, this speech. Really listen to that. And these reputational risks are very important from the reputational context, because there is a risk that women will not join IT. Because why? You know that the global situation is such that some women cannot work and get education. Is that good? No, that's bad. Is it socially significant risk? Yes. Does it affect one state? No, the global economy. And it's very important to take into account and create opportunities. And also the technical risks. Here we have integrational and infrastructural risks and architectural risks. Why do I separate them out? Because when we talk about integration and infrastructure risks, we understand that there are situations when we start to integrate with someone, and suddenly 2 days before the release, we understand that hardware can send only true and false, not the number of fuel, but in API it was we thought that it will provide the number of liters of fuel filled. So this is a tough situation. Every time integrating with someone, I really find out what hardware, what kind of information hardware can send us, and if they don't make proper interface for this hardware.
How to detect risks? Well, it's not difficult. First and foremost, there is surveys and feedback forms. Product manager and user may meet for feedback from the user and make their own analysis. Brainstorm. Brainstorming is one of my favorite, most my favorite ways of doing it. If you decide to play the risk, each department taking part in this project needs to present representatives. Nobody has the right to assume somebody else's role. Why? Because it's clearly seen during the workshop. You're working based on your experience. You cannot project yourself on anybody else. I give an example about Challenger. Who thought that you would need to turn to a school kid schoolboy, but school children is tomorrow's generation of engineers, astronauts, tomorrow's generation of relatives of engineers and astronauts. They need to be sure that the space program will survive, will develop, and they'll be able to realize themselves that they'll be supported by the state. And the people who died didn't die for nothing. They made a feat. That's great. Documentation, analysis, one of my favorite points. It's great to go deep into details. If you read the state standard, you'll read that if you do according to the standard or to the law, you'll be a success. If you open the code, so the way the code is written, the way it will work. It's not true about the documentation. You better read the code with the developer. In this case, you will see the whole picture. When you do this, you'll see the difference between how the businesses think and the status quo. And there you will detect your own risks and try to mitigate them. And of course, the story of the data analysis usually teaches us that to find median modes and so on. You don't need an ideal graph. You don't need, not interested in that average user. You're interested in statistical failures and misfits. You need to understand what led you to this misfit. There was some load, say your payment system. The average payment load during an event was 500 RPS. It's an average load. Let's say you're a financial institution. All of a sudden, at some point, your load becomes 2500. You have enough power, software power and hardware power. But if it peaks to 10,000, will you survive? If it's 2500 all the time, not in the peak, your task is to understand what happened prior to you getting 2500. You received the times 5 increase in your load. You need to look at the times 5 quotient. Only then you will understand that the next peak may be as proportional as this. The proportion will be the same, but the figure will be different. What if you get a bigger database of users? Let's say you acquire somebody, merge with somebody. What will you do with the 7500? There are good examples when bank database they failed due to high load. How do you work with the risks? To work with the risks, you need to work with a simple tool called Romboard. This is a table where you move risks around. Resolved, owned, accepted, or mitigated risks. There are two. It's a quadrant, 4 quadrants. What's great about the Romboard and working with a board in general? When we talk about the flexible methodologies of development and the project process management, we usually mean agile, regular. Well, seldom we work with Kanban. One of the cadences of Kanban is the risk observation. I'm a big fan of Kanban. My team start working with Kanban wherever I come. Its pros is that it's non-revolutionary. You don't have to transform C-level or investors or other teams, other clusters. You are transforming whatever you can in the amount that people are ready to accept it. You're not ready to be responsible for all the cadences. 2 of them are yours, the rest are waiting for. You're ready to wait for something. Kanban allows you for that. Maybe at some point you start crawling, You'll be your way towards your goal. What's great about working with a board? While working with a board, you teach yourself. I mean, teaching something, preparing someone is not a great word for that. Train something. You are trained the company. Remember, the risk management, working with risk, is a corporate thing, not the local one. You are communicating your messages openly. You are discussing the problem. The problem needs to be seen by everyone. There are ideas that will allow you to do something better. Again, a great example from the United States here. There's a law-based institute there. Which helps to push through a certain law or legal act into the Senate. There's a risk that it won't go through, but if it does go through, you'll be fine. But if it's the legal act is there and you're fine, but sometimes not all the users can pay you money and they start using illegal software. On the one hand, you're earning more money. On the other hand, there is some outflow of customers. One risk breeds other risks, whether it's positive or negative. There's another thing. When you start working with risk at the corporate level, you start sharing the responsibility. You understand that there's me who can do something, and there is another department, let's say the economic security department. However good I am at anti-fraud, however good I am at KYC, there are people who are experts at that. So I'm gonna give it to them. I may consult them, I may support them, because this is not their risk, it's the corporate risk. But this is their responsibility zone, and I can do everything for them to make the proper decision. Risk management cycle. This is exactly that it looked like in the previous example. It doesn't work with risks when you manage risk in one project and you do not manage them in another project. You either manage them or don't. It's a cycle that is uninterruptible. Your project ends not at the release date, The main issue, the main pain of the startup is not that it will die, but if it survives. Same is true about the project. Main problems start when they launch the startup. You need to develop it and to support it. And the risks surface not when you launch it. You may have to postpone it or need additional servers. That's not the worst thing. The worst thing is when you have users aligning to you to get registered, or when you SMF fails and you will not be able to identify users for 3 days. So it's easy on the one hand, just like we discussed with you during the first slide. You need to call it, analyze, name, analyze, take a decision, manage risks. You kind of mitigated it, but at some point the risk may reappear or move to another department. Interesting story here. There could be the same risk in different departments. Example of shuttle. Astronauts assume risks of their death. The smart people, they know that they may not return to Earth. Can their PR service assume the risk that they will not return to Earth? Yeah, Yes, it can, but in this case, it's a bad service. For this, they need to have a whole program prepared for this case. In this case, they will have to start a program that would run smoothly. This is what the road board looks like of risk management. Color box risk management. Color box may get in the brain. It may not get be too sugary. Flour may be in the need, and the fox may want to eat it. How to visualize the risks? When you work with the risks, first you need to evaluate by all the participants. It cannot happen that the grandma evaluates the risk and the granddad says, you wait. Just wait. A main character plays the major role. It doesn't work like this. It happens when all the participants get together and agree on the risks, the risk management. The fox says, I promise I'm not going to eat it. And the grandparents said, okay, the fox will not eat it, so that we can assume this risk. There are risks that are more expensive to mitigate than to assume them or to accept them. The fox example comes to mind again. What do you do with a collar box surrounded with a barbed wire? What if a bear comes, not a fox? You need to shoot it too. What if a rabbit comes? Bite a couple of pieces of it, even though it's a herbivore. So yeah, the shoot or barbed wire. So it's unclear. All people are mortal, but sometimes it happens unexpectedly. So the developer may face this problem. I don't have 3 developers and stack developers to work with me. It doesn't work like this. Another example about the risk attributes. When you start working with risks, you see a brief description. For example, you can run out of flour. And the grandma assumed this risk. Is this information enough to understand what the risk is about? On the one hand, it is. Absolutely so. On the other hand, it's not always the case. Why? Because to talk about the risk, we need to name them. Until you name them, there's no issue. Just like in the criminal law. Find the body, you got a problem. You need a description, at least a short one. What do you mean by getting running out of flour? It was there, but there was no delivery. It's still there. Depending on your flour, depending on the problem, you have to deal with the risk separate, special way. We can say that grandma is responsible for all the risks. So you either give away parts of the risk to different departments, or you say, grandma, you're responsible for the flour delivery. How critical is it? You cannot work with all the risks at once. You'll be flooded. If you assume too many risks, there's a chance that when you're in a stress situation, you have a lot of problems, you start assuming more risks. This is not my circus, not my monkey. But a person wants to get quick acceptance and quick confirmation that they're fine. And I believe many of you like to get OKs for your clusters. And when you're in stress, you start helping other people around. Otherwise, the the community will not survive. At this moment, you will start to drown and to sink. So you need to concentrate on the most important things and aspects. It's best to read books about minimalism, like the Japanese books about minimalism. And they tell you the best way to deal with projects, or Reputational. This way, you will be able to deal with projects better. It may seem funny. How does it relate with the development? But it does. You have the same problem, circle it, concentrate on it, solve it, and then follow the template. If you understand it's not going to work, review the situation. Maybe the tray is in the wrong place. I think you should read those Japanese books. The critical definition. Who saw the meetings where the tech support comes and said, this is a critical mistake, we all die. And you say, well, they need my help. Well, it turns out that what they mean by they're dying is there is a first line in the support where students work, and for 2 hours in total, over a week, one of the students is dealing with something, and you understand that if you go and try to fix it, the two teams, or developers plus architect, 3 business departments, will have to solve this task for 3 weeks. You calculate the salaries and calculate the risks, and you want to hire 2 more students. Remember, we had guys with Harry Potter and the requirements, and they spoke about business analysts, that whether we need them or not. Sometimes we may not actually need them. Just get another student. Feed the students, and he or she will help you. That will be a win-win situation. So explanation should be in the figures. If you cannot name a figure, you don't have a critical status. For example, we have a legal risk, and there's a chance that something may go wrong. You ask what, and the answer, we may break the law. But after 50 of such questions, it may turn out that you may get rid of the license and you will be jobless. And one of the departments may get into jail. And then I'm going to go fix it. Additional attributes. They appear when you start to move your bugs from backlogs to the parts to the right. Of course, if there's a risk, somebody must accept it or assume it. Second is the time when you need to go back to the risk. You may have the risk that will not happen now. You may say that we'll go back to that risk in August, for example. Let's remember this year. In March this year, Russian president addressed citizens and said that IT companies will get tax concessions. And then we wait until July for the tax authorities to come or not to come to us. It's a positive risk, but it happened only when the tax authorities sent us the documents that said when it will not come, how it will not come to. Before that, you couldn't do anything about it.
So they had 2 months to issue, and otherwise they will, yeah, they would be able to, into months they would be able to visit you if they wanted to. And next thing is the trigger. It's a situation which should occur uh, for trigger for risks to be activated. Okay, it's not very good example maybe with astronauts, but okay, astronauts couldn't land, then PR started to do something, others had to do some work as well, analyzing landing and taking off procedures, etc. So a lot of risks were activated by this trigger. But trigger is also a risk when you start working with on board. Uh, you can set pins between the risks and put a red thread between them. Do you like the detectives? I mean the books. You know that when there is an investigation on site going on, so you put kind of strap around the site of the crime, and by that you mark the area. And we have run out of time actually. Okay, I will finish. So when you start working with the risks, after a while you will decide that on board will not suit you anymore, and you will start using mind map. As soon as you understand that on board is not good for you anymore, you will start using the other level, the mind map, and you will see, because you will see something that you couldn't see before. And also so here's the reference to additional sources, literature, and you can study it by yourself. Deal with risks. So this is my Telegram link, and also some extra link which you don't. Thank you for your talk. It was super. I have a little maybe stupid question. No, there are no stupid questions. There are questions that were not asked, and that is not good. Okay, so as we see, so we as analysts have to include the risks in our quite standard analytical work. I mean, in our analysis, and I also received training on risk analysis, reading different books. But normally, we cannot do it in a centralized way. Like, for example, I talked to a customer today, but then I start doing it in start dealing with the risk. So, at which point of analyst's life cycle shall we start that? No, you shouldn't start that at all, because analysts cannot do cannot integrate risk treatment. Risk treatment can be integrated in the work of the company when you have two strategies: technical strategy and corporate business strategy. And when at the level of technical strategy, at the level of development and department, you take a decision to start working with the risks, you're ready to share them, you're ready to get problems from business because you're already honest and they are still not, because you come to business say we have risks and they will kick you for that. So if you are ready for that, if you're ready to start step by step pulling the business to your side, then do that. Before you have corporate values, corporate culture of security, retrospective analysis, then it's very strange if you do so. You can deal with the risks of tomorrow, like not enough budget, or somebody breaks a leg. It's quite useful, but at least okay, you will start thinking in the right direction. Will it be useful at the corporate level? No. At the project level, maybe, but at the corporate level, no. So this is not the story about standalone work, but about the corporate approach, or at least about a very good support, like SEO development, saying that, okay, let's go together and do it. So you have to cooperate. Thank you for your presentation. My question, how shall we deal with the risks so that it doesn't become the objective by itself, just dealing with the risks? And how shall we avoid a dinosaur walking on the board? But if you have this dinosaur, this risk, okay, what's next? You can accept the risk. Well, then accept this risk if you really need this. Or maybe if it releases your emotional tension, why shouldn't you accept the risk of dinosaur walking in? Well, when you start dealing with the risks, you will understand that for the first 2 years you didn't call them correctly. There was some schizophrenia on the flip chart, no budget, not enough budget. But what does that mean? Why has it really changed or what? Why can you run out of budget? I mean, okay, so the gift goes to Lady in Black.